Avengers! Assemble. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. This is your episode for May 29th, 2021. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined as always by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior, Christian. How you been?
I've been doing alright, you know, I've been continuing my Marvel rewatch this week for the MCU, you know, got back into it.
We have some things to discuss a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. I just did Age of Ultron last night, and I did text you about it because historically, and if you've been following the show since the original run, where Excelsior was an MCU review show, Age of Ultron, I view in a better light than Avengers 1, but I had a hard time putting it higher than Avengers 1 on the rewatch this time.
Yeah, so I think you and I both put that movie above the original Avengers a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And recently when I rewatched it, I encountered a very similar situation where I was like, oh man, I don't know if I agree with that really anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, apparently you ran into a similar situation. So what made you think of it not as highly this go around?
So I still think that Age of Ultron is a much stronger Avengers movie, and I think it's a more entertaining Avengers movie, like in terms of the team. But I don't know what it was, dude. It just I think, and I think it's like a better made movie too. Like I don't know what it is that just made it difficult for me. I do, you know, it is really upsetting seeing how they treat Black Widow in that movie. So that was definitely a hurdle on the rewatch. But like at the same time, it also introduces Wanda and Vision. I love both of them. Ultron I think is fine. I think it's very cool in hindsight because, you know, Ultron kind of has the same ideas as Thanos. So like I think Age of Ultron is a really cool movie. It just for some reason I had a hard time putting it above Avengers 1, even though, like I just said, there's so many ways it outshines Avengers 1. What about you?
Yeah. I think Avengers 1 is just easier to sit down and watch as just a popcorn movie like these movies are often intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are just some more issues with Age of Ultron that, for me, have just sort of been a little bit more glaring recently. Like what you said with Black Widow is just ridiculous. Every time you watch that, there's really no excuse to, or any way to defend that. It's just really silly, and it's very distracting from the movie.
Yeah.
I'm also just not the biggest Ultron fan as well. Like
Sure.
I hate James Spader, and it's because of The Office, and I feel bad for the actor, but I just can't like him. I know Kayla's the same
Kayla's
way.
the exact same way. Yep.
So yeah, that's a me problem, but it does affect my my viewing of the film.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I still don't think Avengers 1 is very great in 2021, you know, but it's a really weird beast. Neither of them are the best movie with the Avengers in the title, I would say, but I think Avengers 1 is inoffensive. Avengers 2 can be offensive, but it's still a better movie, I think, is where I'm settling on it.
Yeah, I think if I had to choose one right now to watch, it would probably be Avengers 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I agree that movie is often overrated by a lot of people.
Yes.
Like that's in like the top 10s of people's lists, which is fine. Like you can have your own opinion, but overall I do think in like what you said in 2021, I don't think that movie is as highly. It should be ranked as highly as the other projects that have released since. I don't think we got a really good Avengers movie until Civil War, which obviously isn't an Avengers movie, but it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Infinity War and Endgame are just like clear in a way the best Avengers movies. Like there's really no comparison between 1 and 2 to 3 and 4. The bar was just set completely out of reach by the Russo brothers. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Hard agree, but we are going to be talking a little bit about Marvel's Avengers this week because there's some discourse going on in the community, Jack. I'm sure you've seen this. Big surprise there, but We are also going to be going over some shakeups at Crystal Dynamics, including some new hires, a brand new studio, and that Guardians of the Galaxy game that Square Enix has been working on in the background for a while at this point. And then in the back half of the show, there's nothing to review this week. We're going to get into Loki next week, of course, but there is some MCU stuff when it comes to Eternals and Spider Man. So we're going to have a lot to discuss this week. But we'll kick off the show the way we normally do with Fury's report this week. If you want to get into the game for some guaranteed drops for your low level characters, the low power level mission is Stark Realities. Ayo.
Mm-hmm.
I actually ran this last night because I've been grinding the game a little bit for challenge cards. So
Whoa, very cool.
yeah, so that was nice, just real quick and easy in and out. Reminded me of the beta because that was the big mission.
Are you getting your all your credits and stuff from the battle pass
Yep,
or whatever it's called?
I never really did it at all, but over the past week, I definitely got into it because I was like, I'm gonna want to get these MCU skins. I'm gonna want to get Cap and Thor when they drop, so gotta have that cash on me.
Yeah, that's a good idea to sort of use that as a way to play the game during periods of lull with Marvel's Avengers, because you can just grind out some dailies and weeklies and just sort of sit on those credits for when you do want the stuff that you want. So yeah, that's a good call.
For sure. If you want to get some gear drops, though, for your high level characters, the high power level mission is Agony and the Anthill. Again, who's to say what this mission is? I think there's a Metal Gear in this one.
Possibly.
The Harm Room Challenge for the week will get you Black Widow 2014, number 13. I think that is the same comic that was there last week.
Potentially.
Which is a first in my eyes. I think we've been doing this show weekly, Jack, since launch, and I don't think we've ever had a repeat comic back to back.
Yeah, maybe it's because of the Black Widow Red Room takeover, and they just sort of want to, I don't know, keep that consistent throughout the event. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to the, harm room challenges all that much. So that is interesting, though, that this is the first instance.
Yeah, first to my knowledge, there could have been repeats in the past of like weeks apart, but it definitely stood out to me as somebody who writes down what comic we get every single week.
Yeah. I will say we always joke about not knowing the missions that are listed in the War Table weekly blog, but they never describe them in the blog. And maybe that's our rationale, because I think they just say Stark Realities, and it's like there's no descriptor. It's not like this is the mission where you go on X and Y with these characters in this place. So that's our rationale. And yeah, also I don't even look at the mission titles anytime I go in. I just look at what type of mission it is and the power level and just sort of jump in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But we do have some updates in the marketplace this week. So Jack, what is going on with this new set?
Sure. So in the past few weeks, the Avengers Endgame skins have been released for Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, and Iron Man. And if you were like us, like Christian and myself, you were probably expecting one or two other drops for other characters, namely Captain America and Thor. But you would have been wrong, because that did not happen this week, which was very surprising because they were doing weekly drops, and in the instance of last week, they had 2 drops in 1 week. So I think it was a little fair to expect an announcement for one of those skins, maybe both of those skins this week. And we didn't get it. So it looks like those are probably going to come sometime in June. What about you, Christian? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the right call. I wonder, Jack, if because it's Iron Man, sorry, no, because it's Captain America and because it's Thor, I wonder if these are getting pushed out of this consistent drop rate because they're requiring a bit more work. Like, I wonder if, let's say, I could see a world where these two are the ones that are going to be the most modified from their base model, where, like, we've talked about this at length. Endgame Thor needs at least the braided beard. And even more so than, like, Black Widow needed, like, a ponytail, right? Like, I think this is essential to this character because his suit is pretty similar to the other ones. And then Cap, we've seen the Cap skin. And we've also heard rumblings of like maybe weapons skins coming to the game at some point. Do you think there's a world where these two got bumped out of this consistent release schedule for the endgame suits so they could just add in the MCU shield and then give Thor the braided beard and the long hair? Is that an option?
I would love that because anytime Cap gets a new, we'll talk about it with the new team up skins this week, but anytime he gets a new skin, the shield always looks so strange next to
Yeah.
it because it's not modified to fit in line with what skin that is. Same with Hawkeye's bow and arrow; they're always purple,
Yeah.
and it's not always consistent. In fact, most of the time, it's not consistent with what the outfit looks like. So I would say they're probably not holding them off to make them more accurate, but they're probably holding them off just to sort of, I don't want to say pad out, but for lack of a better word, pad out the schedule of releasing skins because on their roadmap they said throughout June there's still going to be outfits inspired by Avengers Endgame, so maybe we'll get bi-weekly drops in June. And then in summer and beyond, they have more outfits inspired by the MCU. To me, that seems like the Endgame skins will stop then until we get more characters from that movie. So yeah, I think more likely than not, we will probably just get similar looking skins to what we got, like nothing crazy like Cap's broken shield or anything. And it will just sort of be released at some point in June, I think.
Sure. And I know in the past we were speculating that like, hey, they dropped two last week, they could drop the final two this week, and then maybe next month for more MCU skins, it's a new source of inspiration that's not just Endgame, but I would not count on that anymore. I think you're right. I will say, with this new skin set, for Kate specifically, there is a precedent being set for modifications to weapons because this new set has new fletching color for Kate's arrows this time, not just purple.
Yeah, that's a good call on the word right there.
Thank
Fletching,
you.
you said?
Yes.
That's great. I don't think I would have known that. I would have said little fuzzies on the end of
Yeah,
the bow.
the feathers, you
Or-
know. I
yeah,
was very much just being extra. I think I got that right, but okay. Like,
that's good.
yeah.
That's good. Legolas would be proud.
Thank you.
So yeah, like what you mentioned, this is called the Blue Hollow outfit set. It's hard to describe this one. It's like,
You know that pool floaty ring that is half clear and then the other half is a blue sheen?
yeah,
It's that.
it's like you're looking at. Let's take Hulk for example.
Hmm.
You're looking. He's wearing a tank top, right, in this new set. At certain points, it looks blue, but if you look at it in a different light, it looks purple. It's just like a weird blue purple color scheme. And it's very shiny, and that's sort of consistent across all of these skins for these characters.
Yeah.
So this week is Thor. It's also Ms. Marvel, Hulk, and Kate Bishop. And like yeah, what you mentioned, hers is the weirdest.
Yeah. Because it's a
She has like
recolor of that arrowhead one, right?
yeah, she's got a whole bunch of arrows in her head, and yeah, like the feather on the arrow is pink on the back of hers, so it's recolored.
Yeah, I hope, that's a trend because I think that was in the original drop for both Hawkeyes. They did have in their like little profile pictures different colored arrows, and I think it might have just been a glitch. So obviously that's very different from, you know, putting the MCU shield on Cap's shield, but maybe it's a sign of things to come. Who's to say?
Yeah, and so you mentioned Captain America. He's obviously in line with the other characters in this skin set, but his shield right next to his costume just looks so out of place for me
No,
because
yeah.
you just have the red, white, and blue shield that he's always had next to this like vibrant, bright blue, purple, pink looking outfit, and it just looks off. And I don't know how much work it would probably be a lot of work to reskin his shield because it's like a tangible object in the game and it flies around the map and stuff. So I'm sure me being a developer, not being a developer, I don't really know how it would work, but that seems like it'd be a lot of work to make sure everything sort of lines up with this thing that flies around the map so often. But it
Yeah.
does just look so out of place.
Yeah, I honestly, I think the thing that surprises me most with that is that like the stealth suit in the game doesn't have the blue and gray shield because
Hmm.
you're right, it does interact with the world, but I think it would be, again, I'm not a dev, right? But I think recoloring the rings on that shield is probably less work than like putting in Stormbreaker, like
Oh yeah.
so we'll see what happens. They have talked about weapon skins on their dev streams before, so maybe that happens sooner than we think.
Do you like any of these skins in this Blue
Um,
Hollow stuff?
Not particularly. Yeah, no, I can't say I'm a huge fan of them. They just, like I said, remind me of like pool floats, so I think I'll pass.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I would entertain the thought of looking at Iron Man's skin.
Hmm.
Um, his is, you know, he has the football looking attire on, with like shoulder pads. Looks like he has a some sort of chest protection as well.
Sure.
That looks kind of cool, but again, this is $9 each skin. I don't think this would make me bite. Um, I definitely want a cowboy hat, like what you were saying. I want that Western theme.
Hmm.
Still waiting on it.
It feels like a good July thing, 4th of July. What better way to scream America 4th of July weekend than Cowboys?
Exactly.
Well, there are some updates to update you on in the War Table blog this week. Mainly, I mentioned there was some discourse with the community. The Champion XP system. People are saying it's broken. Crystal's saying it's not broken. We just didn't communicate it well enough. Uh, some people are not pleased with it. So I tried my best. I read a lot of posts on the subreddit of some very testy folks. I went into the War Table blog and read their. I didn't just read the TLDR, I read everything. I read their explanation. There's a lot of math here, Jack.
Yeah, dude, I read through this and I was like, nope, no way. Like, I get it, I understand it, but I couldn't explain it to anyone. No way.
Yeah, so what I can surmise from this is that let's say you have a base stat for your heroic damage, right? And then through your gear or whatever the hell you can pick up to boost your stats, it gives you a percentage boost, right? That would give your heroic stats something like that's why my heroic stat is at 7,000, right? For Thor. So the champion XP system isn't boosting the stat that is boosted from the gear, if that makes sense, right? So like let's let's say this with taxing, right? So you go to a store and this isn't how anything works, but this is an easy way to explain it. Let's say I go to the store and I buy a pack of Pokemon cards and tax on
Can't
it.
do that these days.
I know. Tax on that is like, let's just say 5%, right? So the community's understanding based on I guess the way that the text is written on the upgrade path is that the tax would go through on that pack of Pokemon cards to give you a total, and then the champion XP would be to the same effect of, hey, you get taxed again on that total for some reason because this is a hot commodity or something, right? And then whatever your initial checkout total was, add your 3% champion XP tax bonus onto that. That's what the community assumed it was. That's not what it is. What it is adding that extra 3% tax to the initial item purchase. So you're actually paying like an 8% instead. But it's much more minimal than this. So for the math geniuses out there, it's listed as boosting at 3%, but when you do the math, it's actually giving you like a 0.03 or 0.3% boost to your actual heroic score. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a pretty good um, description of it on the War Table blog. So they use specific numbers, like if you were dealing 2,300 damage and you had like 1,000% multiplier, it would be you'd be dealing 23,000. But with the new system, people thought you would be dealing 23,690 damage, but it's actually 23,069 damage.
Nice.
So yeah, exactly. So that I'm sure that they chose those numbers purposely.
Yes.
But yeah, like that is a clear difference, and it just seems like at the end of the day they didn't communicate it as well. Um, and hey, like I studied communication in college.
Yes, me too.
I can totally see the director of communication or whoever was doing this, um, like trying to explain that and having severe difficulty, because I think if I was put in that position, I would like literally need to ask someone to explain that to me 1,000 times, and I would still get it wrong. So I think
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it was just a difficulty in terms of trying to explain that to people.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right. And I can't I don't fault them for that personally, because the thing is technically it's still like 3% boost. It's just a 3% boost on something you didn't, it's a different stat it's boosting, right? It's a
Right.
different number that's actually being boosted, not what the community thought it was, which like I don't think they lied. They just weren't specific enough to make it clear. Uh, so I personally though, I just don't care because like we can talk about this too because I've been playing the game a good amount this past few week, right? I probably put like 15 hours in since the last episode. Um, I haven't super gone in on leveling champion XP stuff because I've been bouncing around with all my characters, but like I don't think that this boost is meant to be all that drastic, right? It's just something that accrues over time. So, yeah, I have a couple skills on my Thor right now, but they're not drastically changing the way I'm perceiving my, you know, ability in this game. And I don't think that was ever the intent. So, like, to me, 0.3%, 3%, whatever it is, it's still kind of inconsequential at the end of the day. It's just a system in place in the game to make your continual playtime feel like it's valuable. That's why it's here. And it was never
Yeah.
going to be a drastic power boost to begin with, right? Like, it's not going to be so drastic that somebody who's never played the game before versus you who has a maxed out champion playing the same event together, obviously you're going to have an advantage over them, but it's not meant to be like, okay, I can finish this in 2 minutes and without me it would take you 20. Like that's not what this is.
Right. It was meant as an incentive structure to just have max level players keep playing for a reason.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I'm kind of with you. This really didn't bother me all that much. I haven't really dipped into the champion system all too much. I went through Black Widow's like all the challenges for the Red Room takeover, and I never got enough XP for a challenge skill or a champion skill rather. So I haven't even messed with it yet. But yeah, I agree. I think um, I don't know if this really necessarily warranted all the supposed outrage across the community. I feel like it was probably just Crystal Dynamics being like, "Hey, sorry, we didn't communicate that as well as we could have." Um, I would have been like, "Dude, I don't understand math. Sorry." All of you are, smarter than me. I definitely cannot. Sorry, I could not. Communicate that to you. But yeah, it seems like it's working as intended. I think people just sort of, maybe rightfully so, expected the way that they expected it to
Hmm.
um, operate, but it does seem to be operating as intended. So it just seems like a slip of communication. It seems.
Yeah, I think I understand being disappointed by it, but I'm with you. The outrage I think is ridiculous because it's it just reminds me of like beta and launch when people were like, I'm supposed to be the god of thunder. Why do I feel like this? It's like, dude, you're playing a game. It's got to be balanced, right? There's got to be some level of, there's got to be a ceiling. You can't shoot through it, you know? So, like, I'm completely fine with this. Like you said, it was probably a miscommunication. They've said as much. We can move on.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So, I did mention for our updates, I've been playing the game a good amount. I did get a chance to run the Red Room Gauntlet, all 5 rooms, with Black Widow after we recorded last week. And I did stream it. It took me probably like an hour and 40 minutes to get through all 5 with Widow. And specifically, I think the final room took me like half an hour with her. So it was tough. You were not misremembering anything last week. It was definitely a harder thing to do with her.
And that was compared to your what 10 minutes
My
of
10-minute
going through.
run.
Yeah, that's wild with Thor. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think Black Widow I think it's sort of themed obviously after Black Widow because of the context of the supposed story that this follows, which it really doesn't, but it is themed after her, context of her character. I think you're sort of supposed to play it as her because it is more of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
When I went through and played one challenge with Iron Man, it took me, it was very quick because he's a big damage dealer compared to my other Avengers, but Black Widow is more of a utility character using a bunch of like different perks and L1s and R1s and that sort of thing. It doesn't really deal too much damage. So that is funny that it takes a while for her, but for other characters, it takes like a few minutes.
Yeah. And I will say my Widow at the time was a level 50, power level 70 something. So, like, that could have been a factor as well. She's not a god the way Thor is in the game.
Right.
And because she's grounded, I definitely found myself falling into the lava a fair amount more with her than I did with Thor. Because with Thor, I was just, hovering around, throwing Mjolnir around, making sure I wasn't over the pit in case I did get knocked. But, like, Widow, you get knocked on that, like, upper pillar. Good luck, because the odds are you're falling into the lava. So,
Yeah, and her zip line is like very hit or miss. So
hmm
even if you fall, it's like 50% chance of getting back up. So yeah, you have to play a little bit more conservative as Black Widow.
hmm But have you played any more of the Red Room Takeover since the last time we talked?
I haven't. I just like I said last week, I didn't feel motivated to, fulfill all of the challenges associated with the event. Most of them feature uh like different gear that you can get, and it's only legendary gear. It's not heroic gear. Well, one of them is, but most of them are legendary gear drops, and I just don't really think that's worth my time. I also said that with Gear 2.0, at some point in the future, it feels really hard to be persuaded to go in and get gear with a new system supposedly on the way at some point or another. Um, yeah, I just wish there was more of an incentive for me to go back in and do all the challenges because the animated nameplates and stuff, that just doesn't really do it for me. I wish there were just some more good rewards for actually going through the event. So yeah, I don't think I'll play this one before it ends.
Yeah, I understand that. I still stand by where I was last week, where I think this is a decent amount better than the Tachyon event, even though they're still not amazing things. I did end up running the room and the challenges enough times that I cleared all the event challenges. I think probably a day after we recorded last week, so it didn't take me too long. I think it was probably like 3 hours or so. But the one thing I do want to say, because again, I wanted to get prepped up, earn my credits so I could have some money put aside for these MCU skins. And I still want to have 1,000 in the bank for whenever we get the Black Panther challenge card, right? Um, I have found that the Red Room Takeover Room 2 is excellent for farming challenges because unlike the harm rooms, right? It's solo, so you don't have to worry about your crew taking out certain enemies or, you know, removing other enemies from your wake where you could just be like clearing them out in specific ways. So that was very nice. And specifically, challenge 2 is great because it spawns like the first group is three drones, one of the laser guys with the spiky backs, and then just some standard paper thin robots. So like it has been great for doing the 11-point challenges of kill X number of enemies this way, just reloading the checkpoint constantly to spawn all like 15 of those enemies in the first round. So that has been wonderful for getting through these challenge cards. And I've been able to climb a good amount in my challenge cards just from last week to today. So much so that I have 4,600 credits banked right now.
Ooh. Uh, that's a really great suggestion. Like what I did when I completed all my challenge cards was I would go into the character's tutorial harm room
Mm-hmm.
and mess around with all the enemies there, which was fine. Like what you said, there were no, human AIs to deal with that were like stealing your kills, but it was sort of annoying because it is like a segmented challenge. But yeah, that's a really good suggestion because it's just a room full of enemies and it's just you. So that's cool. I do, not even just for that reason, but I do sort of wish these levels just stay in the game. I don't think they
Yeah.
will. Uh, but it feels weird to me with a game that has a lack of content issue, to put something new in the game, even if it's a reskinned harm room, and then take it out afterward. Same way I felt about them taking out the ability to play as any hero in any party. It just feels strange that they're adding, new things in the instance of the Tachyon Anomaly event, things that people have wanted to be in the game just forever, and then just taking them out. It feels a little strange. I know it wouldn't make sense to have this harm room longer than the event is supposed to last, but I don't think people would scoff at the story, you know, like impacts of it. I think it would just be nice to have these redesigned harm rooms, if you want to play them.
Yeah, just make them blue and maybe take out the lava,
Sure.
and then there you go. Your special thing is still special. But what you're talking about though, it is that like that FOMO strategy that stuff like Destiny does consistently, and I get like Apex to an extent, right? Where
Yeah.
uh, you and I played with Mike Connors of Jedi Knights around October. We did I think one match where there was that zombie mode,
Mm-hmm.
which was super cool. And if I think I only played that one night with you guys in October, so like if I wasn't around for that, I would have heard stories of this really cool zombie mode, right? So there is an element with live games like this to do limited times because it's like, hey, we want you in this game now. Like whatever new hot game you're playing, drop it because this game you're already invested in. We got something brand new that's only in there for X amount of time. It'll get the numbers up again. It'll get matchmaking healthy again. But I'm with you where it feels strange because of the not content drought, but like the need for more stuff to do in the game. Taking that out, especially when it seems like the advantages of FOMO on an outside level, right? We don't know the numbers, but it seems like it's not bolstering the game the way a FOMO event could, right?
Yeah. And especially with this one being a decidedly single player event,
Yeah, it's
where
yeah.
you can't even play it with your friends. You and I couldn't even if we tried, we couldn't play this together. So at the end of it, like I totally understand the FOMO aspect. Like I totally get that. I feel like if they did these events and at the end of the Red Room Takeover, being like, "That was a really cool limited time event. Um, we heard your feedback, and we heard that you liked it, so we're gonna keep the room layouts in the harm room if you ever just want to go and play them." I don't think there would be any harm in that, especially since this is particularly a single player event. So yeah, it's just it's a little strange
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Even if the layout doesn't stick around, I I would love the ability to just queue up into a harm room by yourself. That's not the custom ones. I think the custom ones you're still with a squad even. So like yeah, just a harm room where you can run in solo. And I know that's something they've said they're working on in the past in terms of just any mission of just modifying the number of team support you have. But like we talked about with Tachyon, having multiple heroes, great feature. Having harm rooms that aren't the same exact layout for the 54th hour of playing harm rooms, great feature. So
Hmm.
it would be nice if they stuck around.
Totally.
But with that, we got to talk about some stark realities because there's been some shakeups at Crystal Dynamics. Namely, Dallas Dixon, the new head of a brand new studio, Crystal Southwest, located in Austin, Texas.
A whole new studio.
Yeah, that's
So
yeah.
this
Go ahead.
this doesn't. I'm trying to. Would this be a support studio? I guess we don't know the full details, or would this be a whole new like? What's a good comparison? I like at some point when Naughty Dog was making Uncharted and The Last of Us, they had two studios.
Hmm.
Is it that situation where like these two studios under the same umbrella are working uh, on different projects, or is sort of this new Crystal Southwest helping Crystal Dynamics proper in more of a support capacity?
So the official statement is that Crystal Southwest is a studio that is going to be working on support for current and future Crystal Dynamics games. So I don't know if they'd ever be leading a game, right? I don't think there would be maybe, down the line eventually, but as it stands, it sounds like Crystal Southwest is support for current Crystal games and Crystal games coming up. So
Gotcha.
what that means for Avengers, I think could be good because recently we know Brian. I'm forgetting their last name, but the former Marvel Heroes Omega developer who came in as a systems designer, uh, that was a recent hire. Now Dallas Dixon coming in, formerly worked with BioWare on Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is a as live service as it gets because that's an MMO. I think they're making some very interesting moves for the future of this game that honestly makes me hopeful, I guess, about the future of Avengers. Because I don't know if you saw this either, Jack, but, and I didn't put this in the doc, Square Enix was talking recently about their games over the last fiscal year, and they were speaking positively about Avengers for like a surprising level of praise for how that game did for them compared to what they were talking about around launch.
Yeah, I mean, ha- putting a whole development studio in support of this game is definitely a good prospect for the future and health of this game. I am still of the opinion that they would probably do a sequel for this game, but in that case, I'm sure this studio would help. But it is good, like as a fan of this game, just to think that there's a whole team of other people that are being pulled in to help manage this game and to help release content and just sort of get things going for the game because it feels like this game really needs a Kickstarter to really get going in the way that I think fans expect it to have been going recently. And yeah, I think a whole development studio is a very good sign for this game, and it shows that Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics are still obviously going to support this game. So yeah, this is cool.
So, keeping that in mind, hearing the fact that Square Enix is, you know, not not talking about the game, and when they are talking about it, they're talking about it in a positive light. Do you think are you still locked in that you think, or maybe not locked in, but are you still leaning towards the side of the changes we would see from the talent of former Star Wars: The Old Republic, former Marvel Heroes Omega, direction and experience will be reserved for a sequel, or do you think that we will get an update for this game at some point?
I feel like this game would probably do like a 2 year situation and then do a whole sequel or whatever it ends up being. Like, have a roadmap that lasts as many years as it will until the sequel comes out. I feel like this game, in some instances, just needs so many updates that a sequel is probably warranted, and just how the game operates and things like that. Um, so I feel like they're building up support for Marvel's Avengers in general, not just for this game, but the future, potential sequels and stuff like that. Because, like what you said, them bringing in people from other games that worked on sort of live service games, it seems like they can implement that more in a sequel with like a clean slate rather than just sort of try and put that into this game, which I'm sure they could, but I think it would probably be a lot easier just to start from square one and make all these updates and stuff with a sequel, with all the challenges they had with this game. So
Yeah.
I still think there's probably a sequel coming for this.
I definitely think that's possible, especially when you look at competitors, right? Because that's just how things went down. But for myself, as somebody who played Destiny, uh, who had my ear to the ground for the Destiny community as well, around the end of that game and when Destiny 2 came out, that was a big issue where the community, who was much healthier, but we're still within year one now, so things could change, um, was very much not on board with the jump to Destiny 2 because just cutting off content, cutting off your progress, really not having a ton of carryover outside of your character and just like your in world history was not wonderful for a lot of people. Division, I think, faced a similar issue with their jump from Division 1 to Division 2. And I think there's been enough backlash for every single live game that gets a sequel from the community with the same exact issues that I hope Crystal Square and Marvel realize that and know the benefit of not doing a sequel and just doubling down on what they have and making this better, you know? Because I think within Square, again, I'll bring it up, Final Fantasy 14, that wasn't, they didn't say, like, okay, let's just cancel this MMO and then make a new MMO. They put the work in on that, and I think that is their most valuable IP project they have right now. Like 14 has been going for I think close to a decade at this point and is making money hand over fist for them every year. And it's still getting support. There's a new expansion this year and there's years to come out of it. So like I think there's absolutely a scenario where them doubling down on this current Avengers game is the right decision. I just hope that all the gears in place would allow that to happen because I think that would be more beneficial long term. Because you also have to remember, like, this game's got a bad image right now. I think next year, if they're like, hey, Avengers 2 coming summer 2023, I mean, we'd obviously be excited for that. But I think the greater public, it's like, that first game was terrible, wasn't it? Why would I buy a sequel? So like I think there is that there's more value to a redemption story than there is to a you know what, let's try again, I think.
Yeah, see, that rationale is why I think there would be a sequel.
Okay.
Because, like, for example, I know, like, this game is supposed to be a live service game. I don't think it's been treated as well as it should have been as a live service game. But I'll make, like, the Battlefront comparison. Battlefront 1 launched, and, like, people just didn't like that game as much as they were expecting. And then I know this is a weird comparison, but then Battlefront 2 came out. Obviously, it had its share of issues. And then by the end of that game, like 2019, 2020, it's one of the best Battlefront games ever. And I feel like this game, like what you said, it had a rough launch, and public opinion about it wasn't good from the beginning. So I feel like starting off with like a fresh slate with all the things that they learned from this game and going into a sequel and just sort of being maybe what this game was supposed to be, continuing on the story. And it sounds like all the updates that they want to have for the game, like it seems to continue that would take a lot of effort, and the game would look quite different than it does now. Um, to me, that strikes me as like a big sequel update. I wouldn't mind all the progress not carrying over in for me personally. I'm just used to that with sequels and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like to regain public opinion, public favor, I feel like a sequel might be a good step. I could also totally see this just being Marvel's Avengers for the next however many years. But right now, I think a sequel is probably likely.
So, which one would you be happier with personally, do you think?
I think I'd probably be happier with the sequel. I feel like all the updates that I'd want to see in this game would be pretty drastic and would look kind of different than just updates for the game. So if they started from ground zero and just took what was good about this game and made it better and just added some really great quality of life improvements and stuff, and also utilized next gen or current gen hardware now with PS5 and Xbox Series X, um, I think I'd be happy with the sequel, honestly.
Sure, I can see that. I think I'd be a bit more hesitant with the sequel. Like I would love to see them really just go in on this one and making it the best it can be because for all the struggles it did have at launch, I think every live service game launches with a bunch of issues and takes some time to recover from them. Like for as successful as Outriders was, Outriders is still having a lot of problems. And they're not calling that a live service game, but it kind of is the way that
Oh
this
yeah.
isn't really one, you know. Um so I feel like maybe a sequel within 5 years of this first game launching would just throw that wrench of like having to deal with the growing pains again when they don't have to if they can just get past it with this one and then really build off this because again Destiny I think has had some pretty major jumps with obviously not its main interface from expansion to expansion but on a systems level for sure it's done a lot of pretty drastic changes so like it's definitely possible. I think you're right where having a clean cut sequel could be a smart move, but I think I'll have. There's a world where I'm more on that path if War for Wakanda isn't what we hope it is. I think.
Yeah, I feel like the second year of this game will really be the telltale sign of
Yeah,
what they're gonna do. I I I totally agree with what you just said. I feel like the Black Panther expansion will be like the litmus test of like what is this studio gonna do to support this game going forward. If that expansion isn't what we expected and it is just a glorified hero drop with a new biome or whatever, that'll be a problem. And I feel like this game has already had so many problems where if it just continues on that trend and we're not satisfied with the Black Panther expansion, then I think it might be time for a sequel in terms of how can we do what we wanted to do, but just sort of reworking what they were trying to do with this game into a sequel. Because I think if you just continue on that trend with just releasing subpar content that just doesn't, meet the expectations of the community, that are reasonable at least, then I think it might be time for a completely different strategy for this type of game. And for me, that screams sequel.
sure, I can see that absolutely. Well, knowing what we went through with this game, I wanted to hear what you have to say about this other rumor that's going around because I read this recap about the hire and the creation of Crystal Southwest from GamesBeat. GamesBeat notably has Jeff Grubb at their service. And at the end of this article, Jeff Grubb brings up that he said GamesBeat can't confirm, because this was a rumor for a long time, but it kind of disappeared for a while. And now it's back in the headlines. Guardians of the Galaxy is still getting a game and is being worked on by Eidos Montreal, who most recently did Shadow of the Tomb Raider when Crystal left the Tomb Raider series to do Avengers. They also were responsible for the Deus Ex reboot and sequel. So and I think Eidos has been doing some support for this game to some capacity, but that Guardians of the Galaxy game, it was rumored to be Avengers and Guardians back in like 2016 when the first rumblings of a Square Enix Marvel partnership came out. And Guardians kind of just disappeared after we got that first Avengers teaser with the CG iconography of all the Avengers. So I guess knowing what we know now, seeing that Guardians has been on the back burner presumably for a long time, and knowing Eidos' history, like what do you hope slash expect this Guardians game to be compared to Avengers?
Hopefully not a live service game.
Okay.
I would love a four-person, however many Guardians they end up using, whatever it is, um, co-op game where it's sort of. I'm thinking of Gotham Knights, honestly, where it's like optional co-op. I guess we
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen that game, so we don't really know, but that's how they're pitching it at least. Um, Either optional co-op or completely just play the game single player and choose your Guardians. That is how I'm picturing this game, and that's what I'm hoping for. And then eventually, wherever Marvel's Avengers ends up when this game releases, have a Guardians of the Galaxy integration into Marvel's Avengers where you let the Guardians of the Galaxy game sit for a while, and then you have the sort of like you do like a Black Panther expansion, but you do it for the Guardians, and they have their whole season or whatever. I think that would be really cool. It might be challenging to maybe have them play similarly across both games, so that's probably a challenge. Um, but we've also seen that Marvel hasn't really done a games universe. Like the Spider-Man game from Marvel isn't connected to the Avengers game, so maybe I'm just going out on a limb here saying that they will be connected. At the end of the day, they probably won't be. That'd be cool though. But yeah, I hope it's just single player or uh, optional co-op. I hope they don't do the whole live service thing. What about you?
Yeah, so I definitely think it's going to be in the same universe. Um, I'm hoping it is single player, not even co-op. I hope this is a single player game, and eventually when we do get an Avengers 2 or when Avengers hits year 6, we add the Guardians to the Avengers game and then work them into this story because I think that could be cool. I think in hindsight they probably saw how multiplayer was received here, and maybe it was early enough where they were like, let's just scrap the multiplayer component of this game and then just make the story a little longer, add another character, and then just like reallocate. Because I do think it would be a great idea to incorporate the Guardians into Avengers for that synergy in this universe that they've created to the point where eventually maybe either the big finale expansion for Avengers includes the Guardians and is some cosmic level threat, or maybe Avengers 2 comes out after the Guardians game and features the Guardians as playable characters in the roster, and it's about the Infinity Saga or something. I definitely think same universe. I think crossover at some point in some way, but single player is where I'm expecting it to land.
Yeah, I'm glad we both talked about the potential for the two brands to cross over because I feel like it just makes a whole bunch of sense with what we've seen in the MCU, and just that would be such a great thing for players who of both games to go through the Guardians game, and then there's an update for Marvel's Avengers, and it features one, if not all, of the Guardians of the Galaxy from the game that you just played. I think that'd be a really that would go a long way to further the Marvel's Avengers brand, at least. And so far, I don't think Marvel has really done the whole game universe thing, like I said, and I think this would be a really cool step in that direction. And it could introduce the possibility of other games aside from Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy in this game's universe. So, yeah, that'd be really cool. And I feel like we heard about this Guardians of the Galaxy game what feels like a decade ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm sure like it is still being worked on. We don't know the details. I'm sure I would not be surprised if this game just silently disappears at one point or another. I kind of honestly thought it already did. Um, but yeah, that this is hopeful at least where we know it is still in some fashion or another being worked on. So that's cool.
I will go out on a limb and say we get a CG announcement that this game exists because there's no official announcement that it exists. I think
Hmm.
we'll get a CG announcement similar to that Avengers one from 2017
Yep.
at E3 this year.
That I was gonna call you a crazy man for saying that, but
Hmm.
that would make sense because it took 3 years for Marvel's Avengers to release after
Yep.
that thing. Remember that
Yeah.
time where everyone was like, "Oh, like there's a Marvel's Avengers game. We have no clue what it looks like,"
Yeah, it
and that
disappeared for
was
like
for
two
so
years.
long. Yeah,
So I, all I'm saying, let's keep an eye out on E3. We'll see what happens. But before we move on, who the hell is going to be Star Lord? Because Troy Baker and Nolan North are already in this universe for them.
mm. Wait, who was Star Lord in the Telltale
Oh, I have no
Guardians?
idea.
Remember that? I did not play through that.
I did not either.
I don't know. I'm glad though. Like I have a thing with the voice actors in the games industry. They do a lot of voices, and you just notice them all the time. So fresh voices, I would say. Give some fresh voices.
Get Anthony Gruber. He
Remind me who that
does.
is.
He is the guy that blew up for doing a Harrison Ford impression on YouTube a while ago, and then he got cast as the Joker in the Telltale series.
Okay. Joker from Telltale. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I think he could do well. Because he can do a Harrison Ford impression. Star Lord's basically Indiana Jones in space. So
Yeah. I'm all for that.
hell yeah. Well, we'll see what happens in the game universe. But meanwhile, there's a lot of stuff going on, Jack. We gotta talk about this.
Yep.
Um, Let me breeze through the casting news first because that is sort of irrelevant here. Um, it's official. Oscar Isaac is Moon Knight.
Huge surprise. No one knew
Yeah.
this.
Why did it take this long?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's talk about how weird this is because they had the Disney Investor Day. Did they even talk about Moon Knight? I think they did. Um, or they announced a whole bunch of like casting stuff, like throughout the months recently,
Hmm.
and Oscar Isaac was not confirmed as Moon Knight, but there were so many rumors and like almost evidence pointing to the fact that he was, and they never officially confirmed it until now in a very strange social media post of like a awkward selfie of Oscar Isaac with like Moon Knight photos behind him. It's really strange. I have no clue why now was the time.
Yeah, like Ethan Hawke was cast in this show for months, and I think they've been shooting this show. So like, it's just so strange that they came this late, and like we've all known, right? It's just so strange to me. It's the weirdest Marvel announcement I think in a long time.
Yeah, it's bizarre, but glad it's official.
Yes. Another one that I think is very funny. Christopher McDonald is joining Secret Invasion for Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did not fact check this, but the image I saw in the headline looks like 30 years ago. That's Shooter McGavin. I don't know if that's the same actor, but Happy
You're
Gilmore's. Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely correct. That is Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore. Also Kent Mansley from The Iron Giant, one of my favorite movies.
Damn, I did not know that.
Yep, that's him.
That's
So
cool.
good to see him having some work thrown his way. I haven't seen him in anything in forever.
Yeah, the last thing I think I saw him in was Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, he was definitely like those three examples, or did I say two or three examples that we talked about were all from the '90s. So yeah, it's he's been out of. I feel like he's been out of the public view for a while
Hmm.
in that sort of capacity. So it's cool that he's joining the biggest entertainment property right now. So that's cool.
Hell yeah. There's another casting. This one's more of a rumor. This is not official. But Sony apparently found their Craven for whatever universe they're working on, and it is none other than Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Yeah, so the photo that they released with, or was this whatever publication like talked about this, had a photo of Aaron Taylor Johnson that I looked at it and I was like, all right, that does not look like Aaron Taylor Johnson as I know him.
Hmm.
He had a big beard and that sort of thing, so I could see him in this role. It's so weird that Sony is developing their own Spider Verse without Spider Man. It is bizarre, and I guess the train keeps on rolling. So I think they're really hoping that they're just going to use Tom Holland Spider Man in their Sony Spider Verse at some point or another. But yeah, it's really weird to not have the main character that you want in this. But what do you how do you feel about this potential casting?
Um, it's whatever. Is Craven white?
I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I mean, I like Aaron Taylor Johnson. You know, I feel like he's been misused in most of the blockbusters I've seen him in, but
Hmm.
he's a good actor, and Craven's a cool character. I just, you know, the way Sony's been handling stuff, I just feel like this is going to be a waste of him again, if this is true.
Yeah, I'm not often excited by casting news because you don't get to see the actor take on that role, and it's hard to picture them. So I don't know. I feel like I can't really render an opinion aside from the fact that I guess I could see him in that role.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, if this is true, we won't really know how he is in the role, obviously, until he plays it. Yeah, it's just bizarre to me that all these villains are getting their own movies in the hopes of hopefully we can do a Sinister Six one day. Like that's
Yeah,
where we're going, but it feels strange. It feels wrong. It just feels wrong.
it is definitely a weird approach. I feel like Sony's hoping that one day it's just announced that their stuff is part of the MCU. Like that's honestly how it feels to me. Like,
Hmm.
and we'll see if that ever happens. But speaking of the MCU, we do know that there is now a second Wakanda television series in development for Disney Plus. Deadline's reporting that we're getting an Okoye origin story about how she became the leader of the Dora Milaje.
Yeah, this is cool. This is the like what you mentioned. This is the second Wakanda television series we're getting because we're getting Wakanda Forever, the film, and then there's just a general Wakanda series that we don't know too much about, and this is more focused on Okoye and how she got to be where she is. So yeah, this is cool. I think she's one of the standout characters from Wakanda in the MCU, and any more projects focused on her specifically has me really excited. In the Dora Milaje, I would imagine we would be getting sort of insight into how that group works within Wakanda a little bit more. So yeah, that has me so excited. This is cool.
Yeah, and she's returning to TV here, you know, because she was on The Walking Dead for a very long time. Um, so yeah, it's exciting. I wonder when this gets out there in relation to the other Wakanda show. I don't know if Ryan Coogler is involved with this one as well. Um, I would imagine at least in some sort of consulting form. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for this one because honestly, we haven't talked about it a ton, right? But I think for a Black Panther 2, if they don't go the Shuri route, I kind of would have loved to see Okoye become the new Black Panther.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So the fact that she's getting her own show, that'd be nice. You know, at least she's getting a spotlight because I think there's absolutely more to mine from her in the MCU. So I'm glad we're gonna explore that.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you.
Um, Jack, I don't know if you have an experience with this, but you know what I'm completely fine not exploring any more of?
What's that?
MODOK.
Ooh, tell me about it.
So, MODOK, for those that are unaware, is a new Marvel series that is debuting on Hulu. It's a Hulu original, Hulu exclusive. It's a part of the Offenders Initiative, which I believe also consists of Howard the Duck and two other shows. Um, Patton Oswalt's behind this. A lot of comedians who you'd recognize, their voices are lent to the cast in the show. I watched two episodes. I don't know how many are out right now, but I'm fine not watching any more of this show.
So what's like the premise and like what's the tone of this show?
So Modoc, the villain of Marvel's Avengers,
Oh yeah,
um,
very familiar.
is front and center. You know, he's in charge of AIM. He works with Monica, so like definitely seeing AIM headquarters, seeing the keepers, seeing Monica was definitely a bit of whiplash with seeing this. Uh, but it's like it's sympathetic kind of because Modoc has a family. He has a wife who is becoming an influencer. Uh, she wrote a book. She's popular online. He has two children. One of his daughter, it looks like him. His son is a standard looking child, and he's so obsessive over his work, over becoming the supervillain, and he's ends up ruining his wife's chances at getting some deal. So now she wants a divorce. So Modoc, it's a show about Modoc going through a divorce and occasionally doing supervillain things, and it screams like 40-plus-year-old nerd humor, and I'm not having it.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But I had no hype for this, and I probably wasn't planning on watching it. But yeah, I will probably stay away from that.
Yeah, like, do you like Robot Chicken?
No.
Yeah, it's Robot Chicken because it's animated the same way. It's like I think the animation's cool because I do like stop motion stuff, so it's cool seeing that in use here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the Iron Man made a cameo in the first episode. There's a couple things I was like, oh, that's funny, but like 99% of the humor, I'm just like, oh, I know exactly who wrote this, and it's Patton Oswalt.
Yeah. So, dumb question. Is this? I feel like I already know the answer to this. Is this in the MCU?
No,
Okay.
it's in
That's
its
good
own
at least.
pocket thing for Hulu. So
Gotcha.
yeah, like it is strange. I did see some positive reception to it online, and I did like how the animation looked. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll check it out. But I don't even think I finished the second episode of this. I was like, I'm, I'm good. It's it's for people who are later in their lives dealing with things like divorce, wanting some relatable superhero storytelling for that. And I'm like, okay, I know what this is, and it's not for me.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like we're the target audience for that show.
No, so I'll check out the first episode of Howard the Duck though, whenever that hits. Why
Yeah.
not?
He needs a good comeback.
Oh, absolutely. Uh, you know who we're probably the target demographic for though?
Who's that? I mean, what's that?
This new Spider-Man movie.
Are we though?
I mean, of course, we've grown up with all three Spider-Men, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They want us to feel the nostalgia when we see uh, actor name Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man, Paul Giamatti's Rhino, and Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin.
Yeah. Dude, it just feels like someone dumped out a Spider-Man toy chest and is just ramming these toys back and forth together and being like, let's make a movie out of this.
Yeah. So, Collider, the Jeff Snyder, I think he has a podcast. He works for Collider. The Snyder Cut podcast mentioned that one of his sources said that Willem Dafoe is going to be the main villain of Spider-Man: No Way Home. Separate reporting that the Amazing Spider-Man, Lizard, and Rhino are going to be in play here alongside Electro and Doc Ock. I Here's where I'm at with this, Jack, and I want to hear where you're at. I think the justification of finally making a Sinister Six through just all the attempts they had at trying to make a Sinister Six through the multiverse and just making that a thing, I think that's cool. I think that's a fun, smart thing to do, and you could do it well because these actors playing these characters, even the Amazing Spider-Man ones, with maybe the exception of Paul Giamatti, I thought were all pretty good at playing that character. So pulling them to make a Sinister Six movie for Tom Holland, I think multiverse, explain it, it makes sense, it's fine, and that's going to be a great thing for him. But I think what's holding me back is pulling in Toby and pulling in Andrew. It's like why? Like that is what takes the steam out of it for me because you're lessening the potential growth and arc for Tom Holland's Peter in this movie, I think, by bringing in the other heroes.
Yeah. The my level of fear is just continually rising with this movie, and I'm very excited for it. But anytime I hear news about casting and stuff like this, and then pulling in from the other movies, the alarm bells are just ringing constantly. Anytime I think about this movie, like this, I think there's good fan service, like in Endgame with Cap finally getting to wield Mjolnir. Like that makes sense, but it is also servicing fans who have seen that in comics and stuff like that. That's fine. I think that's good fan service and it's deserved. I think making a film based off of fans' love of previous movies and shoehorning elements from those movies via the multiverse, like creating a story based off of pre-existing films and stuff like that, and knowing that we're going to get some really cheap, I know that for a fact, we are going to get some really cheap fan service lines or stuff like that. Like, I'm sure someone's going to say pizza time
Pizza
or
time.
something. Dude, this is just, I feel like this has a really big potential to crash and burn. And it really feels like Sony's getting its hooks into this movie and it will affect the MCU. Like, I don't understand how the general consensus, well, I understand people being excited for that. Like, that makes sense. But I don't see how there's not more talk on the internet of people being like, this is not good. This is really scary.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is not exciting me as much as it is for other people.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see this movie, right? And I love Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin.
Oh yeah.
Like, I love him. And even if this movie is a dumpster fire, I'm still going to be enjoying it, I'm sure, and, like, having the time of my life when I see it opening night. But I really, like, I'm just worried. So, like, I know it's a 50-50 split probably, but I don't think Kevin Feige would let this become the mess that it could be, right? I think he'd have some sort of grasp on the situation to not let it get out of hand. So that's where my faith is resting. But I really truly hope that, like, how do you feel, like, separate Andrew and Toby from this for a second. The idea of bringing in the old villains because the multiverse is converging on Peter, Tom Holland,
Yeah.
in itself, I think is great. I think that's a really cool idea. It's fun. I think that is fan service that works. I think that on its own is okay. How do you feel about just the villains separated from the other Spider-Man?
So honestly, I might feel a little bit differently than you.
Okay.
Now that I've been thinking about it more, and we've talked about this in the past, but like Tom Holland's Spider-Man right now is very impressionable, and he needs a mentor. And I thought that was over after Far From Home, but it seems like it's going to continue, and that's fine if it's this contained trilogy, and then he's on his own afterwards. We've talked about that. That's fine. Yeah. So for me, if both Spider-Men in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield somehow enter this movie at the beginning of the movie, and Tom Holland needs to work with them to send them back or something like that, and they serve as his mentors throughout the course of the movie, I feel like that would be fine. And maybe for the like the ultimate battle in the climax of the film, similar to the fight in Into the Spider-Verse, where all the Spider-Men are fighting all the villains. I feel like if we get like a 10 to 15 minute scene where all of the villains are there, I feel like that would be fine enough where it's not like completely in your face throughout the entire movie. That would be fine. And yeah, that's fan service, and it might even be cheap fan service, but it's done and swept away with under the rug very quickly. And, you know, there's no holes that need to be filled afterward. I feel like that would be fine. But if, like, the rumors are that Willem Dafoe is the main villain of this, and if he's in this for like the whole movie, ugh, I don't know, man. It's just I kind of want them to just do new stuff. I don't need a rehashing of this.
So where I was going with that, because I hear what you're saying. Like, I hope if the movie is Tom Holland's Peter Parker, right? Just realizing that there's something messy going on with the multiverse and it's converging, and then all these villains are showing up from other universes, right? And the entirety of the movie is just him becoming overwhelmed with that. Like, I think I'd be okay with it if Willem Dafoe is the main villain and Toby's nowhere near here. Because if this movie is just Tom Holland becoming his own Spider-Man through this like real grueling challenge or something, and then a post-credit scene tease up like a Spider-Verse movie to settle it all, I'd feel a lot better about that than if Toby comes in at the beginning of the whole thing and then it's just the three of them hanging out for 2 hours. Because I think that is where I get nervous of like, Tom Holland is not the main character anymore. It's going to be the spectacle of the three of them. It's going to be about Toby. It's going to be about Andrew. Because like I really do think you need the focus to be Tom Holland, and I think the other two being there the entire time automatically makes that impossible. So like if the villains carry over and then this is like a part one of a thing, I'd be okay with this more and not be as worried about it. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for this to quickly not be a Tom Holland. Like the same way that Civil War isn't a Captain America movie, you know?
Sure. Um, I do like that explanation that you just gave. I feel like if they are getting these actors back, they're probably gonna get them as long as they can. Like I don't know. It's hard to. I don't even know the story of this movie yet. I don't think anyone does. So it's hard to really even like picture what's gonna happen. But I honestly kind of think these characters are gonna be used in more than just a cameo role, which scares me. I kind of wish this movie just didn't exist in the way that it's going to.
Mm,
Um, I hope I'm very surprised by this, but
yeah.
man, yeah, I don't need the references to previous franchises that are now defunct. Like it it feels very un MCU to me, um, and
And
it's just something I don't really care to see really.
like I genuinely think that a Spider-Verse movie could be awesome, but I think we need a setup for it. And I really hope that this movie is the setup, and because you're right, we don't know the whole story here. I really hope that this is the setup for a Spider-Verse standalone thing that isn't a Spider-Man 3, the end of the Tom Holland trilogy. And like I don't know how likely that is, but I really, 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 really hope that's the case. That's just the villains here. It's too much for Peter. He is able to resolve some conflict by the end of this, but see in the sequel, we got a call on the other two Spider-Men, and then we have a Spider-Verse movie. I really think that would be a lot better than what it could end up being that we're nervous about.
Yeah, I like that prospect. Um, we I feel like maybe rumors are I don't know. It's really hard to gauge because like potentially maybe Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are just serve as cameo roles, but then you hear that Willem Dafoe is potentially the main villain, and for me, I don't see that without the other two Spider-Man.
Sure.
Um, but I don't know, dude. I
Because
do like the idea though of what you just said of
mhm,
this being the setup where this is mostly focused on um, our Spider-Man in the MCU, and then he has to go do a Sony side movie that is like technically in the MCU, but like it's not really the focus of the MCU, and it is dealing with maybe previous villains, but also sort of the new villains and Morbius and Venom and Kraven the Hunter and stuff like that. So that would be fine. I think that would be
yeah,
the best way to deal with this.
right. Because we also know, I think the first thing we did learn about this movie's story is that Doctor Strange was going to be his mentor in this one, right?
Mm.
So I can see a world where there is this multiverse madness, and he by the end of the movie is working with Doctor Strange, and they have to pull in the other Spider-Man for a sequel that maybe comes out the next year or something. But I really, because that's the other thing too that I wanted to bring up with these villains, right? What does that mean that Tom Holland is never gonna have a Doc Ock? Because like, if we have Alfred Molina acting against Tom Holland, why? Who the hell would be able to follow that up, right? Like, what do they do next for Spider-Man villains, right?
That's a good call because it's totally fine to reuse villains in new iterations of projects. But yeah, if you if you already have a Green Goblin and you do another Green Goblin, that just I feel like that sort of lessens the impact. You would get a quippy line like "I've fought you before." Like, ugh, I don't need that, man. I really don't.
Yeah, like the more we're talking about this, dude, what if this is the last Tom like Peter Parker one, and then we just move on to Miles? Because like I really don't know how you make Green Goblin in the MCU a complex or interesting villain when you the first appearance of Green Goblin is Willem Dafoe, who I love, but like
It's a cartoon.
yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm equally as excited for this movie as I am completely nervous.
Yes,
And
because
like I just want to know what this movie is,
yeah, me
as does
too.
everyone, because like we gotta get a trailer because rumors are just you know painting expectations in very strange ways.
For sure. And I'm right there with you. And I think we're both going to have a great time with this movie, even if it's bad, I
Mm-hmm.
imagine. You know,
Yeah,
just because, like, yeah, at the worst case, it's a bad movie, but we also get to see Alfred Molina, Doc Ock again, you know? So, like, I'm going to be enjoying that at least. So,
sure, sure. This just I don't know. I hope this isn't for me at least a solo situation where there's just references to things that we didn't need answers to and just silly quips for no reason. I hope it's not something like that. I'm sure there will be because how couldn't you? You have actors reprising their roles, and I'm sure they're gonna have fun with it. But yeah, I don't know. This seems like it's a very possible misstep for the MCU, in my opinion.
yeah, we'll wait and see, you know? But I'm definitely bated breath right now. So,
Yeah,
what is kind of the exact opposite of this, I would say, is Eternals. Because we got that Eternals trailer and it showed off some good looking stuff, I think.
yeah. In terms of visuals, this movie looks really great. Like it's very unique compared to the rest of the MCU, which feels not like manufactured, but um, this it feels like it has Eternals has more of a realistic and grounded approach in terms of like the filmmaking they do, or at least the cinematography that is featured. I watched Nomadland recently, and it's funny because Kevin Feige was talking about Chloe Zhao's like cinematography and how she pretty much never uses like lighting kits. It's always like natural light.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about when I was watching that movie, and I was like, yeah, I don't think they ever used a light source behind the camera to illuminate the subjects of the film. It's usually always like daylight or maybe a fire pit that people are sitting around or stuff like that. And I'd be like very hard pressed to find like them actually using artificial lights to light a scene. So it seems like that approach is carrying over to the Eternals, and it looks to be like a very unique approach to filmmaking in the MCU. And for that, at least, that has me excited.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it looks great. I think it's one of the better looking MCU projects visually, especially more so than what we've seen in a long time, I think, because of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're shooting on film, but that would be swell if they were. Um, and I really also like just talk about like striking visuals. The that ship they have, that just like monolith,
Oh yeah,
it stands out because like the idea of the Eternals being this ancient group of people, you would hope that they have this distinct look that we haven't really seen with much of the MCU, right? Especially when it comes to space. And to me, that their ship absolutely screams that. because it seriously looks like something from a completely different universe compared to the space stuff we've seen so far.
Yeah. In terms of aesthetics, I feel like this movie will definitely stand out in the MCU. At
Mm-hmm.
least for me, in terms of the story, I'm still not sold on the story itself. I honestly don't know too much about it in general in terms of the plot, but also with the characters, I'm not very familiar with them. And this could be like a Guardian situation for me where I sat in that movie and like right before the movie started playing, I was like, oh man, I kind of wish this was a different MCU movie with characters I knew. And then by the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, I was like, wow, that was one of the best MCU movies I've seen. So I'm right in that same position where I'm probably going to be watching this in, what is it, November when it comes out? I'm probably going to be watching it in theaters and being like, oh man, I kind of wish I was at a Spider-Man movie or something like that. And then I hope the plot and the characters convince me of being like, oh no, this was a really great MCU movie. But right now, I'm not super hyped about the story just because I'm not very familiar with these characters.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair, right? I guess the tone of it, I'm into that too from the trailer. I like the more like slower paced, uh, dialogue and scenery that they've been showing here, compared to the very very quippy Marvel stuff. And there's a couple like funny jokes in the trailer, some moments to laugh, but it impressed me. I haven't seen any of Chloe Zhao's other work, but I definitely will by the time this movie's out. And I was into it, and I wanted to write this down. I actually did put this in a note for like a potential topic for the show at some point. But the end of the trailer has a very interesting question of like, hey, who's the leader of the Avengers right now? Because Tony's gone and Captain Rogers is retired. We got a new Captain America, but does Sam want to lead the Avengers? I don't know.
Yeah, we talked about this during Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but yeah, the state of the Avengers is like very unknown right now because
Hmm.
Wanda's gone, and what you just said, those two characters are gone. And it seems like the big threat of Thanos obviously is vanished, and I don't know, but that is a good point. Like, what is the state of the Avengers right now, and what will that look like? But yeah, it's cool to have this trailer sort of question that.
Yeah. So, do you think you're gonna look into any Eternal stuff before the movie drops? Like, are you gonna read any of the comics?
Uh, Probably not, because
Okay.
I don't know if I want to paint my expectations one way or another.
Sure.
Um, I This might be a different sort of comparison, but I read all of Invincible before watching the show, and I was totally one of those people who was like, "Oh, the comic book's better," um, and I don't want to be that person. So I'm probably just gonna go in knowing next to nothing about the Eternals, and then just see where I land after watching it. What about you?
Yeah, I'm considering reading the Neil Gaiman run of the Eternals, which is from the mid 2000s. That sort of like reinvented them because Neil Gaiman is like a acclaimed award-winning writer, and I hear people recommend his run on Eternals a lot. I imagine, like most of the MCU, if it's drawing from inspiration, it's gonna be on that mid 2000s version rather than the 70s Jack Kirby one. But yeah, I kind of want to read it, but at the same time, like you said, I'm worried that it's going to be a pretty close adaptation of the Neil Gaiman story. So like I'm leaning towards no because I do want to go into this with some surprise because like you said, I know next to nothing about them. We're looking at these other projects. I know some stuff about She-Hulk. I know some stuff about Moon Knight. So like this, I truly know nothing, and I kind of want to keep it that way.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But overall, good trailer, and we'll probably see more of this in front of Black Widow. Maybe we'll see Spider-Man in front of Black Widow. Um, but yeah, that is basically everything for the MCU this week. Next week is going to be pretty major too, because we got the first episode of Loki coming up. So I wonder what we'll see of it next week. Maybe a final launch trailer. Do TV shows have launch trailers? I don't know.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
That's in a couple weeks from now, right? June 10th is the first episode?
I
Or
think
June
so.
9th, right? On the Wednesday?
Yeah, June 9th because of Wednesday.
Very cool.
So yeah, we'll wait and see what's up with Loki. But yeah, until then, Jack, where can the agents of Excelsior find you?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter at FascinatedJack. Um, Christian, myself, Omar, and Kevin are friends. We all have a podcast called The Long Play Club. We're currently discussing Metal Gear, and our next episode will be about Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. It's a game that I think is pretty new to all of us in some way or another, so that will be our next episode. So if you like Metal Gear, check out The Long Play Club on youtube.com/joyclicks or on podcast services of your choice. What about you, Christian?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, TikTok at Chun2D2, as well as here, like you said, Jack, for the Long Play Club alongside our other shows, Joyclicks, Gamescast, Jedi Knights, and a bunch of other stuff as well. Working on a couple videos for the near future. And if you're curious about the video game side, we are doing our next Hall of Game induction ceremony, officially, I believe now, on June 3rd. So that's going to be live streamed, Twitter at JoyClicks or ExcelsiorJC, if you want to follow updates on scheduling and stuff like that. And if you want to get involved further, you can go to patreon.com/joyclicks to support the shows at the $1 and $5 tiers. $5 tier gets you producer credit on this show and every show, like Chris Sakas and Aaron Easton. But if you want the audio version of the show, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your service of choice. So, once again, another week in the can for Marvel's Avengers and just Marvel as a whole. We'll see what happens next week. Who else is going to be joining the Spider-Man cast? Is it going to be Tom Hardy? I'm sure it is. But until then, Excelsior.
Excelsior.